An odd event unfolded this past week. Donald Trump conducted a session with his top advisors, the sort of formal gathering where he positions himself at an extended desk, encircled by individuals who typically nod along to his every statement. Yet on this occasion, the dynamic shifted. Amid his vague comments on trade agreements and invented financial trends, Fox News took a step they rarely ever take. They halted the broadcast. They simply switched off, moved to ads, and returned with coverage of a totally different topic. When the network that has backed you fiercely, the one that has justified your words for years, excused every error, and smoothed over every bold move, chooses to no longer air your appearance to their watchers, that reveals all you need to grasp. This wasn't Fox News shielding Trump. This was Fox News guarding their viewers from Trump. Since what emerged in that advisory chamber was a figure evidently deteriorating in mind and body, even they recognized no favorable angle could mask what was obvious to all. Let's examine the details of that session, as the segments that surfaced are genuinely alarming. Trump attempted to discuss the latest financial data, and I use attempted quite kindly. What occurred was him tossing out arbitrary stats, mixing up nations with businesses, and at one moment entirely losing his train of thought midway through a remark. He stated in his precise terms, "We're pulling in 400 billion, perhaps 500 billion. Some claim 600 billion from China, from Canada, from the European Union, which is essentially Germany when you consider it, and no one has witnessed figures like these, the largest in record." None of that holds real value. Those aren't strategic proposals. That's not a distorted take on facts. That's someone grasping for digits that seem grand while lacking any real understanding of the subject. But it's beyond the content of his words. Observe his physical state, the manner in which he clutched the desk, the way he bent ahead as if relying on the wood to support him, the way his aides, like Carolyn Levitt, Stephen Miller, and others present, observed him like caregivers monitor a charge, prepared to intervene if issues arose. And following that, he avoided any inquiries. He didn't approach the press. His group hurried him from the space as swiftly as his fading strength permitted, because they understand. Each of them understands. Here's what stands out as utterly clear. Donald Trump's team no longer assists him. They're managing him. There's a vast gap between those roles. Think about his public visibility now versus his initial term. In those days, regardless of your view, the individual was omnipresent. Regular media sessions, lengthy impromptu speeches. He would position himself near his aircraft and just speak. It was free-flowing thought, certainly, but he remained sharp and engaged. These days, he seldom appears. When he does, all is meticulously arranged. He depends on prepared text for statements he once delivered spontaneously back in 2017. Only vetted questions get through. Press entry is restricted. And if anything deviates from the plan, they remove him immediately. Why this change? Because those near him, Stephen Miller, Elon Musk, J.D. Vance, aren't focused on promoting Donald Trump's aims anymore. They're advancing their personal agendas as he unravels before the public eye. Recent accounts indicate Miller maintains a private direct link to Trump, supplying him details constantly, effectively establishing an informal authority setup that bypasses the standard White House hierarchy. That's not dedicated assistance. That's seizing influence. That's positioning oneself as the true authority while the nominal leader declines further. Elon Musk has publicly clashed with Trump's stated positions. J.D. Vance is conducting his own discussions, portraying himself as the steady, dependable figure in the group. These individuals aren't aiding Trump. They're exploiting him. They're gaining wealth, promoting their schemes, trading stocks with privileged knowledge, and simply awaiting the inevitable point when he's too diminished to halt them. Donald Trump has turned into a symbolic leader in his own administration, and all around him recognize it. But this is where it becomes especially revealing. This is where Trump's cognitive condition becomes hard to ignore. You might have caught wind of this. Donald Trump is presently delaying national infrastructure funds, particularly for the Gateway Initiative, which is essential transport setup for the Northeast, unless his name gets added to Dallas Airport and Penn Station in New York. Consider that again. The leader of the nation is employing coercion against an active senator, Chuck Schumer, to have public sites rechristened in his honor. At first glance, this appears merely pitiful. It's the conduct of a profoundly unsure, self-absorbed person who lacks sufficient recognition in youth. But it delves further, because examining the trends in Trump's actions over recent months paints a distinct image. And that image shows a figure in complete distress over his historical remembrance. He rechristened the Kennedy Center to incorporate his name, turning it into the John F. Kennedy and Donald J. Trump Center for the Performing Arts. He wouldn't allow JFK's sole claim to that. He's directed the erection of a massive arch in Washington, D.C., a clear self-tribute that experts liken to the vanity-fueled endeavors of Saddam Hussein and Stalin during their waning periods. He's attempting to relabel military installations, official structures, any edifice tied to government funds. Why this abrupt fixation on tributes? Because records demonstrate that when rulers perceive their conclusion approaching, be it in politics, health, or otherwise, they accelerate their tribute constructions. Saddam Hussein's palace project surged in the late 1990s amid global restrictions that left him cut off. Stalin's self-adulation intensified as his suspicions and well-being worsened in his final phase. It's a recurring theme. When strongman rulers sense their era concluding, they aim to etch themselves in rock because they realize they've forfeited command of their narrative. And Trump realizes he's forfeited command. It's evident in his online updates. It's audible in his recent manner of speaking. He began this week, and this is real, pondering if he'll reach heaven. He shared it unexpectedly. He wrote along the lines of, "The vicious false media continues claiming I stated I'm not heading to heaven. It was humor, but they treated it gravely since they're awful folks aiming to portray me poorly." To start, no one was covering that. He introduced it himself. He's the one obsessed with it. Next, Donald Trump, a person who seldom mentioned faith except to court devout supporters, who failed to cite any scripture when prompted, who once declared he's never sought divine pardon, is now preoccupied with divine judgment. That's not strategy. That's mindset. That's someone confronting his mortality and acknowledging no manipulation can alter the outcome. Accounts from within Mar-a-Lago suggest he's discussed his burial, how folks will recall him, what narratives will emerge post-departure. He's bargaining with the past as it unfolds, and he's failing in that bargain. You seek the ultimate emblem of Trump's anxiety over his remembrance? The Kennedy Center case. After Trump imposed his name on the facility, after he organized a grand rechristening event, after he posed there grinning as if achieving something significant, the Kennedy Center ceased operations, simply halted with no reopening timeline. Formally, they cited upgrades and restructuring, but let's speak plainly about the reality. Donald Trump couldn't tolerate his name alongside a genuine leader's heritage, a leader noted for his foresight, eloquence, and devotion. So instead of permitting that contrast, instead of chancing the site not receiving the adulation he craved, he shut it down. He withdrew entirely. And here's my forecast. Note it and revisit later. In a decade, each tribute Trump constructs today will spark shame. Lodgings will strip the Trump label to evade protests, and some have begun. Structures will receive fresh designations. The arch will be dismantled or repurposed. His offspring will seek separation from the identity, and certain ones already do. The tributes he urgently pursues won't safeguard his remembrance. They'll turn into spots folks tour for mockery. Folks will view Trump's blunder like they observe outdated memorials, not for reverence, but to recall what we've overcome. Donald Trump perceives this, he understands this, and it's eroding him internally. But understand this. This extends past one elderly individual's conceit. This compulsion for tributes, this alarm over remembrance, links to something far riskier. It ties to what his group strives to conceal. Because simultaneously as Trump seeks to erect tributes to himself, his group is methodically eliminating others' pasts. especially African American pasts. It commenced from the outset of this term. The reversal of inclusivity efforts, the stripping of items from national museums, the alterations to educational plans, compelling institutions to excise mentions of bondage, segregation rules, and equality struggles from U.S. history lessons. Recall the Enola Gay incident? They scanned federal archives for the term gay and began erasing entries. They dismantled a whole display on the aircraft that released the nuclear device because gay featured in its title. That's the extent of absurdity at play. But it's absurdity serving a precise aim, which is obliterating records. Now, many correctly noted, naturally, Trump aims to obliterate African American records. He's prejudiced. His group includes racial extremists. They reject those tales. That's accurate, but not complete, because the motive for obliterating African American records isn't solely animosity. It's a calculated approach. Totalitarian systems require forgetting the past. Dictatorial governance can't endure if folks recall its mechanics, its appearance, its victims, and prior oppositions. A recent discussion on a show between Andrew Schultz and Charlemagne the God illustrated this flawlessly. Schultz, recall, supported Trump, rationalized Trump, assured folks they exaggerated about Trump, now voiced astonishment at the scenes. "I never imagined this in our nation," he remarked. "Individuals gunned down publicly by government forces, households divided, equipped enforcers pursuing folks without cause." And Charlemagne offered a response so straightforward, so evident, and so impactful. He stated, "You never imagined it affecting white folks." Because this is the truth. This defines U.S. history. This has always defined U.S. history. Where did law enforcement originate here? From groups chasing enslaved people. That's the root. Authorized men empowered by authorities to pursue African Americans, return them to captivity, and intimidate groups into compliance. That's the start of U.S. law enforcement. The current immigration enforcement sweeps, agents invading residences without authorization, splitting kin, vanishing folks into holding facilities, that's not novel. That's replicating the escaped slave regulations where national agents gained authority to chase humans across borders and haul them back to chains. The armored officers assaulting demonstrators publicly. The state monitoring of organizers, the penalizing of mutual assistance. African Americans have endured this for 4 centuries. Native Americans documented it through their suffering. What's occurring isn't Trump creating U.S. tyranny, it's U.S. tyranny expanding to all, and that's precisely why they must obliterate African American history. Because if citizens comprehended that history, if they fully grasped it, they would instantly identify the present events. If we understood Frederick Douglass, we would grasp confronting authority with facts. If we understood Harriet Tubman, we would grasp forming hidden support webs. If we understood Ida B. Wells, we would grasp recording atrocities and compelling national acknowledgement. If we understood Fannie Lou Hamer, we would grasp local coordination against flawed structures. If we understood the Black Panthers' meal initiatives, we would grasp creating neighborhood aids that reduce reliance on oppressive governance. If we understood the worker campaigns by A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin, we would grasp halting commerce when leaders ignore pleas. They're not obliterating history due to disdain for yesteryear. They're doing it because they dread an educated tomorrow. They're frightened that if you learned how African Americans opposed captivity, segregation, and widespread imprisonment, you would know precisely how to oppose them. That's why Trump's tribute erection and history removal are linked aspects of the same controlling tactic. Erect symbols for the system. Remove symbols of defiance. Dominate the yesterday. Dominate the tomorrow. But it won't succeed, because here's what Donald Trump fails to comprehend. His remembrance is already set. It's complete. It's sealed. No quantity of stone or ornate rock or relabeled hubs will alter it. January 6th will be examined for ages. Not as a noble revolt, not as a gathering that escalated, but as a despotic bid to topple governance by a leader who denied his defeat. His image will accompany the term rebellion in educational materials eternally. His virus handling, advising chemical injections, conducting crowded events amid massive deaths, dismantling readiness frameworks because a prior leader established them. That's his remembrance. His policy dividing kin, youth confined in enclosures, young children defending themselves in migration hearings, countless households forever separated. That's his remembrance. His dual removals from office, his 34 criminal charges, his accountability for assault, his deceit rulings, his removal of secret files. That's his remembrance. Coming generations won't inquire, was Trump an outstanding leader? They'll inquire, how did citizens succumb to this again? His identity won't signify excellence. It'll signify national downturn, democratic erosion, and the swindler who almost ruined the system. Every tribute he creates is another item to dismantle. Every designation he applies is another to erase. Every structure he mandates is another for later groups to remove. That's his true remembrance, and he can't revise it. But do you know the genuine tribute to this period? It won't be his structure. It won't be his relabeled hub. It'll be the opposition. The vast numbers of women who demonstrated post-inauguration and continued. The protective areas that declined participation in his removal efforts. The vote guardians who shielded the process as he dispatched crowds against them. The reporters he labeled foes who persisted in factual coverage. The legal experts who pursued case after case to thwart his extremes. The support systems that nourished folks amid his shutdowns, the youth coordinating environmental actions as he weakened safeguards, the kin divided by enforcement who battled for reunion, the gender-diverse youth he sought to marginalize who stood firm. That's the tribute. That's what will be shared. Not his edifices, not his addresses, but that countless citizens faced his control and declared, not in this place, not to us, not at any time. The tribute to this period is each individual who opposed, and that tribute is forming currently, live, by everyone involved, which returns us to Chuck Schumer and that hub naming arrangement. Senator Schumer, your role now is straightforward. One clear duty: refuse bargaining with intimidation, reject constructing symbols for oppressors. Deny this figure additional remembrance safeguarding as he dismantles our system. The reply to Trump's pressure should be direct. No. Construct the Gateway Initiative since its vital setup and designate it for the builders, not the aspiring oppressor who delayed it. This tests not only Schumer, but each opposition member claiming resistance. Will you truly counter, or will you compromise with control for simplicity? But beyond that, this tests us all, as Trump's circle banks on our exhaustion. They bank on our lapses. They bank on us overlooking our path here and the guides to escape. So here's our approach. Document all, each violation, each falsehood, each offense. Form the archive they aim to ruin. Absorb the past they seek to conceal. Study Frederick Douglass, study James Baldwin, study Ida B. Wells, study the thinkers they're expelling from schools, grasp the defiance methods they hide, and we construct the alternative narrative now, amid their rule. So when this phase concludes, and it will, the taught past is authentic. Not Trump's illusion, not his symbols, but the actual account of events and our survival. They desire our forgetting. Our duty is total recall. If you followed to here, you're in the opposition. You're contributing to that alternative symbol we form, and I trust you'll continue with me. Press that follow option. Add a positive mark to this content. It aids in connecting with more who require this message. And if you remain to the close, place a blue symbol in the responses so I recognize your presence in the effort. Chuck Schumer, choose wisely. No hubs, no symbols, no pacts with rulers. And to all others, persist in the effort, persist in recording, persist in absorbing the past they aim to remove. They rely on your quiet. Withhold it.